Welcome, everyone. Good morning. I'm Julie Livingston of Want Leverage Communications, here for another episode of PR Pattern, my video podcast. We produce this podcast on a bi weekly basis, so I hope you've been watching and getting some interesting insights that could be useful in your business. And today I'm very excited to invite James Brockbank to the show. Let me just bring him on. Welcome, James.
Hi,
He
Julie. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. A little hot today, but great.
Can relate.
James is the founder and managing director of Digital Loft, and has been doing digital public relations since long before anybody actually called it that, which is pretty cool. He spent the last 12 years growing an award-winning agency that's become known for delivering digital PR that actually influences revenue, not just vanity metrics, and that delivers forward thinking strategies rooted in a deep understanding of what search engines and now answer engines actually reward. He's also the founder of the Digital PR Summit, the UK's largest digital PR conference. So, welcome again. I'm glad to have you here. Let me just
Likewise, really excited to be here.
I want to let people know how they could reach you, and there is your website so they can contact you. And I'm assuming they could also contact you on LinkedIn, James.
Absolutely. I spend too much time on LinkedIn. You can always contact me on there.
That sounds familiar. So, how does AI search pay a keen ear to earned media? Because there's been a lot of talk lately about how earned media is coming back. I don't know how it ever went away, but that it's really coming back in importance because of AI. So maybe you could
Absolutely.
explain that.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, PR and earned media is absolutely having its moments again, which I think is it's fantastic. I think the simplest way to think about it is that AI search engines don't take your word for anything. What other people say about you matters as much as, if not more than, what you say about yourself when it comes to visibility in AI search. And I think, look, we're in the middle right now of this debate. Certainly, I come from an SEO background, and, I've been doing SEO just coming up 18 years. And look, the argument the industry is having right now is SEO versus GEO. And I spent a lot of time thinking about this over the past 12 months, GEO being generative engine optimization, and really that sort of discipline on how to get your brand recommended by AI search and have the AI recommend you. And look, I think it's a bit of a stupid argument for the simple reason that it very much depends on how, and if you were seeing SEO as just being about your own website, about manipulation, the sort of SEO that should have never worked, should have never been followed. And I think, certainly my background, I started doing digital PR, as we now call it, using PR to earn links, mentions, coverage for brands to increase their authority and their, as such, their, how they deserve to rank on the search engines and be recommended as experts, as businesses at the top of their field. I started doing that in 2015. And I very much had I've had a long-standing belief that you have to be worth ranking on the search engines. And that comes from building a brand. So when we come into the AI SEO world, there's now this narrative that you need to be using earned media to influence what other people say about you. In many cases, trusted journalists, authoritative publications. And I completely agree with that. Earned media is vital to being recommended by AI and AI search platforms. But it should have also been so important and so vital to being surfaced by search engines. So I think I come at this as a perspective of earned media is so, it's so incredibly important for being visible in AI, for the simple reason that when somebody asks ChatGPT or Google AI mode or enters a search term that triggers an AI overview, what's the best X? What's the best mattress? What's the best pizza oven? What the model is essentially doing is it's synthesizing what the wider web says about you. I'm sort of a long-standing believer that if you are actually the best and deserve to be recommended, other people will be saying that. You cannot be the best if you're the only person saying it. And ultimately, what AI is doing, it's exposing brands who were maybe didn't have good enough products or services or customer service that previously hid behind good marketing. Now that AI is synthesizing what the web knows and says about you, it's impossible to hide behind marketing on its own. But where this crosses over into my background, which is SEO and PR, as really with a role of influencing search visibility, is that most of the time when you ask an AI assistant, an LLM, when you enter a prompt, what it's actually doing in the background is it's running lots and lots of web searches for what's called query fan-out. It's taking the prompt, splitting it into lots of sub-queries, and looking at what is being surfaced on the web. Now, the way that it does that is it runs searches across, dependent on the LLM, Google, Bing. It's essentially synthesizing what sources across the web say about you. Yes, some of that will be your own owned content, your own social profiles, but it will also take earned media. It will take review platforms. Going back to the example I gave you before, if you run a search for, or a prompt, let's say a prompt in an LLM of, I'm looking for a recommendation of a mattress, I have back pain and I'm a side sleeper. What the AI assistant is doing in the background is going and running searches on various different queries. It's asking, what should someone with back pain look for in a mattress? It's looking at what's the best mattress for back pain. It's running all these sub-queries and synthesizing that together. Now, if you go and look at a search engine results page in 2026 for a query such as best mattress for back pain, probably 80% of the results are going to be third-party buying guides from editorial publications. They are what is being used to feed and influence the LLM to go, this is the most recommended brand product for this scenario. AI is using what the web knows and says about you to influence its recommendations.
So they're validating who you are.
100%. And the way to earn inclusion in these buying guides, these roundups, these trusted sources is for the most part PR. And that's why it's having its moment. It's not just that it helps you to deserve to rank higher on the search engines. It's not just because these buying guides and third-party sources rank themselves on the search engines. It's because then when you get the AI summary, either in a platform like ChatGPT or in Google's AI overviews, which, what I must say, we've got two distinct audiences here with AI search. We have almost the early adopter audience who are taking a conscious effort to go to a platform like ChatGPT, like Claude, like Perplexity, or Google's AI mode. And you then have the group who are trying to run a traditional Google search and who are having an AI overview thrown at the top of the results to summarize and do the Googling for you. It's powered by earned media, what the web says about you. And there has never been, a more important time, because PR has all the benefits it's always had: increasing brand awareness, trusted associations, being endorsed by trusted authoritative publications, but it's also the core source of where LLMs and AI platforms form their recommendations from.
It's awesome. I mean, it's awesome from my perspective anyway, right? Explain
Absolutely.
The difference. I want you to back up a minute. Can you explain the difference between what GEO is and AI search?
Absolutely. So I think GEO is the acronym that some people are using for AI search optimization, generative engine optimization. It's also being pushed out as AEO, answer engine optimization. And I think, certainly in the SEO side of the industry, there's this long-standing debate now since AI search came on the scene as to, as I mentioned, is this SEO? It's not SEO in the traditional sense, in terms of you can't just optimize for a search engine in the way you would have done 10, 15 years ago and expect to be recommended by AI for the simple reason that you have to bring in these third-party mentions, these third-party recommendations. And I think ultimately where we are right now is, does the world need another acronym within marketing? I don't know. And I think, look, it doesn't work in silos anymore. I remember when I started in SEO nearly 18 years ago, and as an SEO team, it was, you guys go away and get this website ranking on search engines. That's no longer possible. SEO teams have to work with PR teams, with brand teams, with product teams. I mentioned a couple of moments ago, a poor customer service that is being highlighted in Trustpilot reviews. It can't hide anymore. The AI is surfacing that, and so AI visibility can't sit in a single team. It involves multiple sort of sector, groups within a business, teams within a business, to make sure that one, what is being recommended deserves to be recommended, and that also the right teams are working together. But what it does need is an owner. It needs, AI search needs an owner. I am still of the opinion that is ultimately going to sit with SEO teams or search teams. Maybe that gets expanded to search teams. Maybe we stop being called SEO teams and it becomes search teams or organic visibility teams. I think what that ultimately ends up as doesn't matter too much, but I think ultimately, AI visibility needs an owner. And I think, the jury's out as to who that is going to be, but it needs an owner for the simple reason that somebody has to coordinate this.
One of the key partners will be PR.
Absolutely. And I think, why I believe that the ultimate owner will be search teams is because to understand how to influence it and what sources are being used by AI platforms to influence recommendations is we have to, one, understand what sort of prompts are being entered into the LLMs. We have to track visibility in them. And we have to be able to almost collate which sources are worth, which sources do we want to chase? And I think, it's an evolution of keyword research, of keyword tracking. And I think ultimately, it's the closest to that. And for that reason, I think ultimately ownership will sit within search teams. And I think, PR can't do it all. If a brand's own site can't be crawled and indexed by the AI platforms, to get technical for a moment, is, if a website is being generated and rendered in the browser by JavaScript, AI platforms will essentially see a blank page. So there's technical elements that come into GEO. But I keep coming back to, I see these arguments on LinkedIn all the time that GEO and SEO aren't the same thing. That I agree with, but I think GEO sits on top of SEO and AI search visibility sits on top of traditional SEO. And it's where multiple teams come together to influence not just what a website and a brand site says about itself, but how that brand is positioned across the web. And I'll give you a great example. As an agency, we are working on our own GEO. We're looking at how we as an agency are recommended and talked about in AI platforms. And if I can make one recommendation, go away after this and go and ask ChatGPT what it knows about your business. You will be surprised. It will surface all sorts.
That's a great exercise.
It will tell you all sorts. That is the simplest thing anybody can do. ChatGPT, what do you know about Digital-Loft? We went and did that recently. And we discovered that ChatGPT he kept referencing us as a digital marketing agency in a city that's 25 miles away. Now, that's really interesting because 10 years ago, we did refer to ourselves as a digital marketing agency, and we were based in a city 20 miles away. So what we were able to do is we were able to reverse engineer, well, where is the AI? Because, look, AI, as opposed to traditional search engines, they tell you what sources they are using to synthesize that data. So we actually found a business directory listing that was probably from 2014, that hadn't been updated since 2014, with our old office address and our old proposition. And that was one of the sources that was being used. Now, that was a directory, but I think, it's just as important to think about that as how press coverage, outdated press coverage that maybe talks about old products. We've done this same thing for many of the brands we work with, and I did this recently for a pizza oven brand that we work with, and we were trying to understand why. They introduced a budget range that is £200, $250 last year, compared to their previous £1,000, $1,250 range. And they kept getting recommended by AI as a premium high-end option. So we did a little bit of digging, and what we found is that the media coverage was so heavily weighted to their original product that actually the justification there was we need to have a big product PR push around the budget range, because actually AI doesn't have enough information yet from third-party sources that you are not just that premium high-end offer. So I think, it's what the web knows about you and says about you. Yes, a lot of the time recent sources are being used, but in the case of things like, as I mentioned, business directories, making sure they are updated and are saying consistently who you are and what you do now is so important. And, I say that as a foundation. Asking AI, what do you know about my business, it's the starting point. And I think every time I do this with somebody, it reveals some insights, and somebody will go, well, that's not true. That's outdated.
Wow.
And it's a great example to help people understand how third-party mentions influence what AI and LLMs say. And it's so easy to do. So we've logged in, we've updated that business directory that we completely forgotten we submitted. We maybe didn't even submit it. Maybe it was created on our behalf, and we're going to watch as it shapes what the LLMs say about us today. But yeah, third party editorial, and that is something that in the traditional SEO world, you would have never gone back to really care too much about what a 10, 11, 12-year-old business directory said.
Right.
If it linked, you'd go, great. But I think that's why it sits on top of it. It's a layer of, I think, essentially going, we've got our search foundations, we're visible in traditional search. What GEO brings into it is how important what other people say about you is, and how consistency across that is so important.
Wow. So what are the challenges, if any, with GEO vis-a-vis the EEAT principles? And maybe you can explain what the EEAT principles are.
Absolutely. So EEAT is another acronym that stands for experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. It's essentially a framework that comes from Google's search quality rater guidelines that their human reviewers use to evaluate the quality of web content. And look, it's all about ensuring that Google as a search engine is surfacing content that is created by people with first-hand experience and or expertise in a topic, that it comes from authoritative sources, and that the businesses, not just creating content, but the businesses that are being surfaced by Google are trustworthy and can be trusted. Now, it's not the same as GEO, and I think what we have to remember is that AI search platforms they're synthesizing what the web knows about you. But I think ultimately many of the foundations have a big crossover in that it shares the principles of third-party validation, which is the importance of what other people say about you,
right,
and how they talk about you, how you're mentioned, how you're referenced. And it's really the authoritativeness part of EEAT. And I've long said now about the concept of EEAT, that authority is almost all page third-party signals. It's about what other people say about you. You can't claim to be the best if nobody else is saying you're the best. And, being classed as authoritative typically means that other people are referencing you, they're interviewing your experts. It's not just search. It's, are you being invited on podcasts? Are you being referenced within articles in the sector? Are you being talked about and mentioned on social media? And I think they are the fundamental principles that have translated very well into AI search, because really the authoritativeness part, and I guess to some extent the expertise and experience, but I think a lot of the time they are what feed authority. Building, becoming an authority in your space happens when you have the experience and or expertise. So I think that translates very well into the AI search world, because it's certainly, to those of us who have been paying close attention to how Google works and to how Google's algorithm has evolved over the past 20 years, what other people say about you and the sentiment of that. Are you being talked about in a positive light or a negative light? Traditional outdated SEO mindset will probably say, who cares if we're being talked about negatively if that includes a link back to our website? It sure as hell matters, because AI, Google's sort of concept of EEAT, there's an understanding now of, okay, well, actually, if there's a slew of reviews out there that say this is a really poor quality product, it's not going to be recommended. Or, as has been happening more often recently, is ChatGPT, especially over the recent weeks more than ever, is now starting to recommend products or services to avoid. And that's a really interesting one, because until recently it wasn't doing that. It was just making positive recommendations.
Wow.
There's been an increase in the number of instances where ChatGPT has been saying you should consider avoiding this product for your use case. So it really matters. And I think, we draw these fundamentals. And again, I think another reason why search teams are going to be the long-standing owners of AI visibility, but PR teams have to work in very, very close collaboration, because I think, it's ultimately brand perception and how authoritative and how widely referenced and talked about you are. And I think it's how smaller brands can compete with larger brands, because actually most smaller brands in many cases are, let's say if they're founder led, their founders are very knowledgeable, very passionate, maybe not in terms of formal university or college education, but they know their customers' pain points. They've usually launched a business for a reason. And that viewpoint is often very, very PRable.
It's because they're picking a niche to go after.
Absolutely. Yeah. Specialists. We have been saying for 2 years now, specialist brands are best placed to win in the today and tomorrow of search.
Wow. So how do you figure out which publications will serve your company, or if you're a leader, will serve you well?
Absolutely. So, and this is where AI is so fascinating and differs from traditional search, in that whether we're talking ChatGPT, whether we're talking Google's AI overviews, AI mode, is these AI platforms are sharing the sources that they use to draw recommendations from. So if you, let's say ChatGPT, if you ask a prompt and it's including sources, you can open up the source panel and you can see which sections of the answer that AI gives are attributed to which sources. So what that means is you can start to see how heavily is earned media influencing the AI recommendations, and which publications, and also which types of content. So if we take B2C retail e-commerce as an example, it is heavily drawing on buying guides, so roundups of products in trusted, authoritative editorial publications. If you look at maybe more B2B or more niche, it may pull on company announcements. It may also pull from interviews with the founder. It may pull from comparisons that are being created, product A versus product Y. And I think that, the main thing is that we have those sources available. They are not the only sources that are feeding into that corpus of information, but we are able to build an understanding of the types of publications and the types of content within a sector that are influencing AI. And then we can build a PR strategy that answers how do we get included in those? What do we have to do? How can we open up conversations with journalists to, one, either get included in those articles, especially when it comes to buying guides and product roundups, they are being updated more frequently than ever because the AI prefers recent, new, up-to-date sources. So they're constantly being added to, whereas once over, those buying guides may have been updated once a year. They're now being updated monthly, if not more in some cases. So the opportunities to reach out and getting those, if you have a great product or service that deserves to be in there. But also one of the shortcuts into that is affiliate deals. So what, and where I think GEO has happened, where it's diverging from SEO is take a link building mindset from SEO. The approach would have always been affiliate links do not have an impact on SEO. Agreed. But the AI isn't looking at those links, it's looking at those mentions. So actually, if you do not have affiliate teams working with PR teams, then the publications are less likely to cover and include because they want to monetize that content. So having an affiliate team work with the PR team, working with a search team to go, okay, we as a PR team can offer this publication onboarding into our affiliate scheme with commission on every sale for inclusion. That's how we're differing from traditional SEO, because traditional SEOs would have gone, we don't want an affiliate link, it won't help us with traditional search rankings. Now it's necessary to be in the consideration set because the publishers need to earn revenue.
The whole thing is really fascinating, that how it all connects together and works. So what about researching the competition? Is it useful to know where they're being featured in the media?
100%. And I think, we're sort of full circle now to the previous question, which is, how do you figure out which publications serve you or your company well? It's asking those prompts. It's asking the AI platforms to make a recommendation on the products or services you sell. And then in turn, looking at where competitors are being recommended that you're not. But I think also, understanding the types of sources that are being pulled from when you ask about their company. I mentioned 10 minutes ago, go and ask about go and ask AI what it knows about your company. Go and ask what it knows about your competitors. And you'll often find sources that are influencing their visibility that you've not considered, that you could go and leverage to influence your own visibility. And look, AI search and the crossover with PR and earned media is building this, what I am finding myself talking about more often is building a clarity layer, building a layer of press coverage, third-party coverage that makes it explicitly clear who you are, what you do, and who you do it for. And does that match what your website is saying? If you are saying you are X, Y, or Z for this audience and help them with these challenges, is that backed up by third parties? If it's not, then you need to go away and do that. And ultimately, I think where we are with the competitive intelligence, we are so lucky in this current era that we now have insights into where the answers are coming from. Google for many years was a bit of a black box. We would test, we would iterate, we would make educated guesses what was influencing visibility. But now we are being told these are the sources that we are using. So go away, understand what AI says about you, what it says about your competitors, reverse engineer that. We now have the sources to be able to do that, to then take a step back and say, here are the gaps in our own strategy. We need to go and address that. And we need to work on really closing those gaps and building that understanding with a clarity layer on who you are, what you do, and who you do it for. And often that's not creative PR. One of the things that we've seen so often in the last year or two is creative PR being run to maybe try and go viral, maybe to run a bit of a stunt. That's great for raising awareness, but it rarely builds a clarity layer. It's that foundational, functional PR that gets you talked about in the context of who you are, what you do, and what your experts and what your brand should be known for.
Thank you so much for clarifying that and for being with me today. I wanted to share this book, and this is how I found James. I hope you can see it. It's called SEO in 2026 with David Bain, Bain. And you could read all about it. What James has to say is he contributed a section to this great book on SEO. If you want to contact James, again, LinkedIn is the best way, or on his website, digitalloft.co.uk. And if you like what you saw today and want to do a thought leadership campaign or PR campaign, please reach out to me at wantleverage.com or, of course, on LinkedIn. James, again, thank you so much for your time and your expertise.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Have a great day, everyone. See you next time on PR Patter.
Bye.